reading us good news about God's love, and that is because of Jesus Christ, it is possible to encounter God tangibly. For Jesus says in today's Gospel, whenever we love, God, who is love, comes and makes a home in us. This good news, however, can be both comforting and dangerous. Comforting because it means reaching God, encountering Him, is actually not as difficult as many think it is. But at the same time, this good news can also be dangerous because it means that since it is not as difficult as we thought, we may easily fall into complacency, thinking that we do not need to put in effort to seek Him, or to live Him, or to love like Him in our life. And so, as Christians, to avoid falling into this complacency, to avoid taking God for granted, we need to constantly and intentionally keep loving like Christ. But what does it mean to love like Christ? For a start, it is to constantly make the decision to love. We often tend to love or think we are in love based on feelings. The danger of such a love is that it is fleeting like feelings. Jesus and the apostles in today's reading teaches us by their life that love is a decision before it is a feeling. They constantly chose to love us and His people even when we don't deserve to be loved. Such love gives perseverance, courage, and strength to keep loving even in the face of persecution and rejection. We see this decision to love in the first reading, how despite being attacked for preaching the good news, they were not deterred from preaching. What about us, sisters and brothers? How often have we stopped loving someone all because we no longer feel that familiar warmth, or feel like it, or when our love does not seem to be reciprocated? To love like Christ is also to be other-centered and sacrificial like Christ. We often tend to love only because we have something to gain, or when it is convenient and comfortable to do so, which explains why the moment we see no gain or benefit, but only inconvenience and discomfort, we give up loving altogether. Jesus, however, through His giving of Himself despite our rejections, accepted the cross nonetheless for our benefit, not His, showing us how God loves and how we are to do the same, and that is to keep loving for the benefit of others, especially when we have nothing to gain from it. Because who knows, it can actually still be turned to be something to make God known. And we see this in Paul's attentiveness to the crippled man in the crowd. There would have been nothing to personally gain from healing that crippled man. In fact, the healing led the people away from the gospel. Yet despite these, because of God's love, He was able to keep focus on the mission of making the gospel known. And therefore He turned even their distraction into an opportunity to preach. A question to ask ourselves: how many of us still love by constantly looking out for the welfare of the other, despite not having anything to gain and being inconvenienced? How many of us continue to love in the face of adversity, that it may be turned into opportunities to preach the good news? Let us therefore, dear sisters and brothers, not be complacent in our faith by constantly striving to love like Christ. For these, making a decision to love, being other-centered, and being sacrificial welcomes God into our life. Because to love in such a manner certainly requires His grace and His help. By our own effort, on our own strength and ability, is certainly difficult, sometimes maybe even impossible. For if we were to think about it, because of our natural instinct to survive, and how we have been taught by the world to be and stay on top, we tend to love only when there is something to personally gain. We tend to love only when it is safe and comfortable to do so. And we tend to love only when we know or are certain that our love will be reciprocated. May we welcome Him, sisters and brothers, into our life, and in doing so, help others to encounter God and His love tangibly in their life too. Let us therefore together pray the words that Jesus taught.